The New Species, Chapter 4. Subject, Captain Wong. Species, Human. Description, Mammalian humanoid. No tail, 6 foot 2 inches, 1.87 meters, average height, 185 pounds, 84 kilograms, average weight, 170-year life expectancy. Ship, USS Valor. Location, Seoul. It had been a close call. After we dispatched the enemy combatants, we received a hail we assumed was survivors, offering surrender. Instead, we got a bunch of garbled static and lost control of most of our systems. Thankfully, we had Tim.
The virus is officially scrubbed clean. There are no further signs of infection, sir. I took the liberty of checking Lieutenant Babanen's suit to make certain he wasn't infected as well,
Tim informed me over the comm. Thank you, Tim. That will be all, I replied.
Well, not quite, sir. Admiral Hackett and Captain Reynolds want a debrief of the aliens ASAP.
I nearly rolled my eyes. Can't get a moment of peace these days. Potential AI is a pretty big red flag when it comes to combatants, so their rush is understandable. We all had a pretty close brush with death, and the poor aliens must be swimming in fear chemicals right now, though. Still, better to get it over with and let them relax than to drag it out any longer. We also had to get med data for them, and that was likely to be unpleasant, especially with Dr. Zickler. Did they provide a list of must-asks? I asked.
Of course. It's on your tablet. Shall I send for shiphead Ulina?
Yes. Clear a conference room and set up an audio call with Admiral Hackett and Captain Reynolds. Since they're so damn curious, they can take part themselves, I said, with no lack of venom in my words.
All right,
Tim said, with an enthusiasm he knew was annoying. I grabbed my tablet and headed to the conference room. I sat in my favorite chair and began looking over the battle data. The Omni Union was pathetic. Their shields were similar to what we use for our infantry, and their missiles were hardly space-worthy, not much more advanced than their foes. If it weren't for the synchronous movements and confirmation from the reptile captain, I would doubt they were AI at all. A real AI was a much, much more dangerous foe. There was a knock on the door, and Lieutenant Babanen entered with shiphead Ulina in tow.
Captain Wong, sir. This is shiphead Ulina of the RSV Loalana. Shiphead Ulina, this is Captain Wong of the USS Valor. Please, have a seat,
Babanen said as he gestured to one of the many chairs in the room.
Thank you for your assistance, Captain Wong,
Ulina said as he sat down. I put on my best captain face and said, I only wish we could have done more, shiphead. My apologies for conducting this debrief so soon after what must have been a traumatic incident, but we have certain policies in place that demand haste when it comes to hostile AI.
After fighting the OU for so many years, I completely understand.
I smiled and continued. Good. This is a formal debrief under United Systems military law. You currently have the rights afforded to you as a first contact refugee. You may request accommodations if you find the debriefing conditions unsuitable to your needs. You may request medical attention as well as food and water. You may refuse to answer any questions that pertain to information that your government entity considers classified. Any violent actions on your part will result in revocation of these rights and will be met with extreme force. Ulina swallowed nervously, but I continued. Refusal to participate in this debrief will result in your classification changing to potential combatant, and you will be detained and confined to quarters, as will any uninjured members of your crew. I am required to inform you that this debrief is being recorded as well as monitored live by Admiral Hackett and Captain Reynolds. They will not be speaking. I added a bit of emphasis on my last sentence, to show my contempt for their micromanagement. The poor reptile looked like his head was swimming. Do you understand these disclosures as they've been read to you? I finished.
Yes,
Ulina said slowly.
Yes, I think I do.
Excellent. First question. What is your rank, governing entity, species, and sex, please?
The shiphead blinked and said, I am a shiphead, which is a commander of a ship in the Republic fleet. The Republic is my governing entity, and I am a male Urakari.
Thank you, I said. Now, for the tough questions. What were you doing before you were attacked?
Ulina seemed unsure whether he should answer. We were sent to scout out warp fluctuations that seemed unnatural, and were ambushed by the Omni-Union immediately upon arrival. Our shields hadn't had a chance to re-engage, so we performed a blind warp jump to escape. Then we wound up here.
Thank you, I said. That answered the next question as well. Moving on. Who are the Omni-Union, and what is your relation to them?
The Omni-Union are a conglomeration of artificial intelligences that are seeking expansion. We aren't sure where they originate from, but they began assaulting Republic forces 30 years ago. We have been in open war with them ever since.
A pop-up appeared on my tablet from Admiral Hackett, demanding a follow-up question. One which I was going to ask anyway. How many AI do you estimate there are? I asked.
We don't know for certain. Ulina looked at the floor. But our experts believe there are at least 100 trillion.
Despite myself, I was stunned into silence for a few moments. I'm sorry, I may have misheard. Did you say 100 trillion? I clarified.
Yes.
Impossible. Just flat out impossible. Their experts were wrong. There's no way that they could have survived being assaulted by 100 trillion AI. That kind of computing power would lead to an unstoppable singularity. Judging by how easily their forces were dispatched and how close the OU's tech was to the Republic's, these supposed AI were imitative rather than inventive. What the hell is going on here? A message pinged from Captain Reynolds. Probably not AI. Might be a Gestalt. VI. Asked Tim. It wasn't long before a reply from Admiral Hackett came in. Yes. I thought for a moment how to breach the subject and finally said, Ulina, I think there's been a miscommunication. Your definition of artificial intelligence and ours seems to differ somewhat. I'd like to introduce you to an AI and ask their opinion on the matter. Ulina's eyes widened with shock that I knew would come. AI is taboo in a lot of cultures for good reasons. Eventually, though, Ulina nodded his consent. Tim, I asked, seemingly to open air.
Yes, sir?
That empty air responded. You seem to be a necessary presence to this debrief. Catch yourself up and then introduce yourself to our guest.
Understood. Working. Caught up. Hello, shiphead Ulina of the Republic space vessel Lowellana,
Tim said, with far too much cheer.
I am the artificial intelligence known as Tim. It's short for Timothy, but I prefer to pretend that it's an acronym for Totally Impressive Machine.
Ulina now looked as if he had seen a ghost. He managed to stutter.
Hello, Tim. Pleasure to meet you.
Tim, what's your take? I asked.
I don't have one yet. I have some questions that need answering first, if you two don't mind.
Go ahead, I replied tersely.
Shiphead Ulina, to your knowledge, have you ever been able to communicate with the OU?
Tim asked. Ulina thought for a moment and said, kind of. When they attack the system, they broadcast who they are and state their intentions, but they don't respond to any communications we send.
Okay, and do you know why your experts believe there are about 100 trillion of them?
Something to do with leftover code found in what debris we were able to obtain from their ships that were taken over?
Tim paused for a moment and then said,
Yeah, I don't think the OU are AI, as we define it. I think they're rogue VI.
The only problem with that theory is that we don't know what could be directing the VI, I said. Ulina looked confused before asking, What's VI? How's it differ from AI?
Tim laughed and said,
A VI would watch a sapient solve 2 plus 2 with 4 and would be able to answer 2 plus 2 with 4. An AI would be able to determine that if 2 plus 2 equals 4, then given any two polyhedra of equal volume, it is not always possible to cut.
Yeah, we get it. You're smart and stuff. Move on, please, I interjected before Tim could finish disproving Hilbert's third problem.
Right,
Tim continued.
When we were hacked, it was by virtual intelligences, not artificial intelligences. About 400,000 of them.
I stared at Ulina for a moment before saying, we only answered the hail of one of the ships. If these experts believe that there are 100 trillion of them based off of 400,000 VIs, then that means they estimate that the OU has
250 million ships.
Tim cut me off. I glared at the speaker that Tim was talking out of. It may seem futile to anyone watching, but Tim knew what I meant, and that was all that mattered. 250 million ships was a staggering number, though. Ulina looked at me and said,
Yes, at least.
How can you be sure of that? I asked.
Our scout ships. We periodically check in on the systems they've expanded into that we know of. 250 million was our latest ship count.
How have you not been overrun? How many ships does the Republic have?
I can't tell you exactly how many, but I can say that we have a near equivalent number.
Ulina looked down towards the ground.
We're not winning the war, though. Don't be so downtrodden, shiphead. It's difficult to win a war against an enemy that can mimic your every maneuver in perfect detail, Tim said in an empathetic voice.
Tim's attempt at cheering up Ulina didn't appear to have worked. I checked the tablet to see if Admiral Heckett and Captain Reynolds were talking back and forth. 250 million might be a problem. Outnumbered 5-1, it's almost a fair fight. No, Reynolds. That's orbital kamikaze numbers, and they likely already know where Sol is. Then should we bring the fight to them? I don't know. Well, that concludes the debriefing. You look a bit down. Follow me to the bridge. I think I know something that will cheer you up, I said to Ulina as I rose from my seat. The shiphead followed me to the bridge, where he stopped, wide-eyed. I looked around and realized that the tech he was seeing was probably pretty impressive by his standards. He hadn't seen anything yet, though. I gestured for him to approach a view screen, highlighting the debris field left by the OU ships. We can't just leave this here. And we don't want to risk losing resources trying to clean it up, I said, while allowing a grin to appear.
What will you do? Ulina asked.
I think an A2 warhead will do the trick quite nicely. Don't you, Tim?
And that's why I like humans, Tim responded, always finding ingenious uses for weapons of mass destruction. Prepping the red matter warhead now. Red matter? What's that? Ulina asked.
One of the deadlier weapons in our arsenal. We aren't permitted to use it in standard warfare, but I already got clearance to use it to clean up this mess. Just watch.
Missile ready, Tim said.
Fire! We both watched the view screen as the A2 symbol approached the debris field. Once it was within range, it detonated, and all the debris was sucked into a singular point in space. There were several flashes of nuclear fire that nearly escaped a temporary black hole before being consumed. I guess those must have been the mines that the lieutenant reported. I turned to see Ulina's expression. I was satisfied to see him mouth gaping and eyes wide. Being a captain in the United Systems has its perks.